The text message came on a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic about Tuesdays. They're just regular days when laundry gets folded and dinner needs cooking. I was chopping bell peppers for a stir-fry when my phone buzzed against the kitchen counter, screen lighting up with a name I hadn't seen in years. Melissa. We'd been close once, back when our husbands worked at the same law firm. Before James made partner and we moved to the suburbs. Before the invitations to dinner parties slowly stopped coming. Sarah, I need to tell you something. Please call me when you can. My knife paused mid-slice. Melissa never reached out anymore. Not since that awkward Christmas party 3 years ago. Something cold settled in my stomach. But I wiped my hands and called her back immediately. I've been going back and forth about whether to send this, she said, her voice tight. But I'd want to know if I were you. The photos arrived seconds later. James and a woman with dark hair sitting at Lorenzo's, that little Italian place downtown where we'd celebrated our first anniversary. His hand on hers, leaning in close. The timestamp. Yesterday, during what should have been his business lunch with clients from Boston. It's been happening for months, Melissa said gently. Everyone at the firm knows, Sarah. I'm so sorry. I thanked her with a voice that didn't sound like mine, hung up, and stared at the half-chopped peppers. 15 years of marriage reduced to 4 photographs and the quiet hum of my refrigerator. I didn't cry. Not right away. Instead, I finished making dinner with mechanical precision, set the table for 2, poured the wine, arranged everything perfectly, just as I always did. The stir-fry was probably the best I'd ever made, though I couldn't taste a single bite. When James walked through the door at 7:38, his collar slightly askew and a hint of unfamiliar perfume clinging to his jacket, I was waiting with a smile that felt like shattered glass against my lips. How was your business lunch? I asked, passing him a plate. Productive. He kissed my cheek absently. Thompson finally agreed to sign. We should celebrate this weekend. I watched him eat, studied the lines of his face. This man I'd woken up beside for 15 years. The slight gray at his temples I once found distinguished. The hands that had held mine through 2 miscarriages. Hands that were apparently holding someone else now. Is she worth it? I asked quietly, my voice steady as I refilled his wine glass. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. What? I placed my phone on the table, screen facing him. Melissa's photos displayed in high definition. I'm curious if she's worth it. 15 years, our home, my trust. I just want to know what the exchange rate is these days. The color drained from his face, replaced by that lawyerly composure he wore like armor. Sarah, this isn't what it looks like. Don't. The word came out sharper than I intended. Don't insult me with lies. Not now. His shoulders slumped, just slightly. Defeat looked strange on him. How long? I asked. 6 months. He couldn't meet my eyes. It just happened. I almost laughed. Affairs don't just happen like rainstorms or power outages. They're built from thousands of tiny choices, each one a deliberate step away from the person you promised yourself to. Her name is Claire, he offered, as if her name was a gift I should be grateful for. She's a paralegal at Westridge and Hayes. I nodded, taking this information like someone noting the weather. Outside, through our kitchen window, I could see our neighbors' children playing in the twilight, their laughter floating across perfectly manicured lawns. How ordinary everything looked when your world was collapsing. I need you to leave, I said, surprised by the calm in my voice. Tonight. Sarah, we should talk about this. I made a mistake, but 15 years, James. I looked directly at him now. 15 years, and you couldn't even choose a restaurant I wouldn't hear about. He flinched. We both knew what I meant. He hadn't just betrayed me. He'd been careless about it. And somehow, that cut deeper than the affair itself. Sleep becomes a stranger when your bed suddenly feels too large. I spent that first night after James left wandering our house like a ghost, touching photographs on walls, opening drawers half-emptied of his belongings. The silence was deafening. No late-night shower running, no soft snores from his side of the bed, no rustling pages as he read through case files, just the occasional creak of floorboards beneath my restless feet. Morning arrived without mercy. I called in sick to the elementary school where I taught 4th grade, something I'd done maybe twice in 7 years. My principal didn't question it, Something in my voice must have given me away. Then came the tsunami of text messages. James, alternating between apologies and explanations. Melissa, checking if I was okay. My sister Kate, who I'd finally called at dawn, offering to drive the 3 hours to be with me. I turned my phone off and sat on our back porch, watching birds at the feeder I'd hung last spring. They didn't care that my marriage was over. They just wanted their seeds. "You should eat something," Kate said when she arrived that afternoon, dropping her overnight bag by the door and assessing me with worried eyes. "I'm not hungry." "I don't care. People in crisis need protein." She marched into my kitchen like she owned it, opening cabinets and pulling out pans with determined efficiency. I wanted to tell her I wasn't in crisis. That word seemed too dramatic for the hollow feeling inside me. Crisis suggested chaos, but I felt eerily calm, like I'd stepped outside my body and was watching someone else's tragedy unfold. Kate made grilled cheese sandwiches, comfort food from our childhood, and sat across from me at the table, waiting until I took a bite before speaking. "Have you talked to him since?" she asked. I shook my head. Nothing to say. There's plenty to say. Starting with, "You're an absolute bastard," and ending with, "I'm taking half of everything." Despite everything, I almost smiled. Kate had always been the fiery one. When her college boyfriend cheated, she'd poured sugar in his gas tank and mailed his mother photographic evidence of his infidelity. I'd always been the measured sister, the reasonable one, the one who made excuses for people. "I don't hate him," I said, realizing it was true. "I'm just disappointed." Kate's expression softened. "Oh, Sarah, that's worse." After she left to pick up groceries, I found myself in our home office, staring at the framed photo from our honeymoon in Maui. Young and sun-kissed, laughing on the beach. I opened the bottom drawer of the desk, the one that held important papers, and pulled out our marriage certificate. Such a simple document for something so complex. Names, dates, signatures, no warning labels. No fine print explaining that "till death do us part" often means until something better comes along. My phone rang. James again. This time I answered. "Can we meet?" he asked, his voice tight with what sounded like regret. "Please, Sarah, I need to explain." "Explain what? Which part needs clarification, James?" "All of it. I made a terrible mistake. I don't want to lose you." I closed my eyes, picturing him in whatever hotel he'd fled to, probably pacing, his hand running through his hair the way it did when he was stressed. For a moment, an unwelcome wave of tenderness washed over me. 15 years creates habits that don't disappear overnight. "You already lost me," I said quietly. "The moment you decided she was worth the risk." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" My voice remained steady. "Help me understand what thought process leads a man to betray someone who has loved him faithfully for 15 years. The silence stretched between us, filled with all the things he couldn't say. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "I don't have a good answer." At least that was honest. I almost appreciated it. "I'll be filing for divorce," I said, the word strange on my tongue. Divorce. Such an ugly word. Sharp-edged and final. "You can have your lawyer contact mine." "Sarah, please. I need to go." I hung up and sat in the stillness of our home. Our home. Soon to be just mine. Or maybe not even that. How quickly certainties become questions. That night, Kate slept in our guest room while I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My wedding ring felt heavy, a weight pulling me under. I slid it off and placed it on the nightstand, half expecting some dramatic shift in the atmosphere. But nothing changed. The ceiling still had that hairline crack running from the vent to the light fixture. The sheets still smelled faintly of lavender detergent. The world kept turning, indifferent to my small heartbreak among millions. 3 weeks into separation feels like living in a foreign country where you vaguely know the language, but keep missing cultural cues. I returned to teaching, finding strange comfort in the predictable chaos of 22 9-year-olds. Their problems, forgotten homework, playground squabbles, difficult fractions, seemed refreshingly straightforward compared to the tangled mess of divorce proceedings. "Ms. Collins, you forgot to collect our science worksheets," Ethan pointed out during afternoon dismissal. "So I did," I smiled, accepting the stack of papers he'd gathered. What would I do without my classroom helpers? What would I do without routine? Without these small moments of normalcy? My lawyer, a brisk woman named Vanessa with impeccable suits and a take-no-prisoners reputation, had warned me that everything would feel surreal for a while. The divorce process has a rhythm, she'd explained during our first meeting. Right now, you're in the paperwork phase. Then comes negotiation, then acceptance. You'll get through all of them. I wasn't sure I believed her, but I nodded anyway. After school that Thursday, I needed to pick up my prescription from Oakland Pharmacy. It was a simple errand I'd done countless times before, but nothing felt routine anymore. Each public appearance carried the risk of sympathetic looks or awkward questions from acquaintances who'd heard about James's departure. The pharmacy was busier than usual, a line of people waiting at the counter. I scanned faces automatically, then froze. There she was, Claire, examining a display of vitamins near the register. I'd only seen her in Melissa's photos, but there was no mistaking that sleek, dark hair, the delicate profile. She hadn't noticed me. My first instinct was to leave, to avoid this collision of worlds at all costs. But something kept my feet planted on the worn linoleum floor. Curiosity, perhaps, or maybe just the stubborn refusal to be the one who retreated. She turned and saw me. Recognition flickered across her face. She knew who I was, followed by a flash of panic. She was younger than me, maybe early 30s, with the kind of effortless beauty that photographed well. I wondered if James had shown her pictures of me, or if I was just an abstract concept to her. The wife. We stood there, 2 points in a triangle with its third angle conspicuously absent, surrounded by displays of cold medicine and discounted Easter candy. I should go, she said, her voice softer than I'd imagined. Why? I asked, surprising myself. You were here first. She looked uncertain, clutching her basket of toiletries like a shield. Up close, I could see the shadows under her eyes, carefully concealed with makeup. She didn't look like a villain from a movie. She looked tired. I'm sorry, she said suddenly. I know that doesn't help anything, but I am. I studied her face, searching for insincerity or manipulation. Found none. Did you know he was married? The question had haunted me for weeks. She nodded, misery plain on her face. He said it was over in all but paperwork, that you'd grown apart years ago. Her eyes met mine briefly. I believed him because I wanted to. The familiar ache in my chest intensified. Of course, James had rewritten our history to justify his choices. It was what he did best as a lawyer, reconstructing narratives to support his case. It wasn't over, I said quietly. Not for me. I know that now. She set her basket down on a nearby shelf. He's been doing the same thing to me, you know, telling me one thing, then acting differently, making promises he won't keep. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Here I was, having a civil conversation with my husband's mistress in the vitamin aisle of Oakland Pharmacy. Life had a strange sense of humor. You're leaving him? I asked. I already did. Last week. A hint of pride crossed her face. He didn't take it well. He never does, I said. And for a brief moment, we shared something like understanding. The pharmacist called my name, breaking the strange spell between us. I moved toward the counter, then paused. Claire? Her name felt strange on my tongue. Thank you for being honest with me. She nodded, a sad smile touching her lips. Good luck with everything, Sarah. I collected my prescription and left, my mind buzzing with the unexpected encounter. In the car, I sat for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. I'd imagined meeting her so many times, screaming matches, cold stares, dramatic confrontations. Never this quiet exchange of truths in a fluorescent-lit pharmacy. My phone rang. James's name flashed on the screen. I heard you met Claire, he said when I answered, his voice tight with accusation. News traveled fast. Yes. What did she tell you? The truth, I replied. Something you might want to try sometime. I hung up before he could respond and started the car. For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first step toward whatever came after anger. The coffee table had been a wedding present from James's parents. Hand-carved oak with a glass top, it had survived 3 moves, countless dinner parties, and one particularly wild New Year's Eve when Kate had danced on it after too much champagne. Now it sat in the center of my living room, covered with papers bearing terms like equitable distribution and marital assets. The house might be a problem, Vanessa explained, tapping her manicured nail against our mortgage statement. You both put money down, but he's been the primary earner these past 5 years, since I'd reduced my teaching hours to try for a baby that never came. The irony wasn't lost on me. I want the house, I said simply. Our neighborhood had good schools. My garden had finally started blooming. My life had already been uprooted enough. Vanessa nodded, making notes in her leather-bound portfolio. Then we'll need to negotiate elsewhere. The retirement accounts, maybe. Money had never interested me much. James was the one who tracked investments and monitored interest rates. I'd been content letting him handle our finances, a fact that now made me feel foolish and dependent. What about this? I pushed forward a statement from a bank account I didn't recognize. I'd found it while sorting through the mail last week. Vanessa's eyebrows rose slightly as she examined it. This is a personal account. Significant funds, too. She looked up at me. Did you know about this? I shook my head. Another secret to add to the growing pile. After Vanessa left, I opened a bottle of wine, a rich Cabernet that James had been saving for a special occasion. Divorce papers seemed special enough. I carried my glass through the house, mentally cataloging our possessions. The framed landscape from our trip to Montana, the leather sectional we'd argued over at Crate and Barrel, the espresso machine he'd insisted we needed. Objects once chosen together, now awaiting division like spoils of war. My phone buzzed with a text from James. We need to talk about the house. Apparently, Vanessa had already contacted his lawyer. I didn't reply. Instead, I found myself dialing my mother's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar, though tinged with the caution she'd adopted since hearing about the separation. How's the paperwork coming? She asked after preliminaries. It's coming. I sipped my wine. Did you and Dad have a prenup? She laughed, a bright sound that momentarily lifted my mood. Honey, when we got married, your father owned a used Chevy and I had student loans. There was nothing to protect. Unlike James and me, he'd already been an associate at his firm when we met, with a promising career ahead. I'd been finishing my teaching credential, idealistic and passionate about elementary education. I never thought I'd be doing this, I admitted quietly, calculating who gets what, putting a price tag on 15 years. Oh, sweetheart. Her voice softened. No one walks down the aisle expecting to someday walk into a lawyer's office. The truth of this settled over me like a heavy blanket. I'd worn ivory at our wedding, not quite white, which had felt too traditional. My mother had helped me choose the dress, a simple A-line with delicate beadwork along the neckline. James had cried when he saw me, the only time I'd ever seen him tear up in public. Where was that man now? The doorbell rang, startling me from my reverie. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw James standing on the porch, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the spring chill. Mom, I have to go, I said quickly. Is it him? Her voice sharpened with maternal protectiveness. Yes. Remember, you don't have to let him in. Not your house, not your rules. But it was still our house, legally. And despite everything, I found myself opening the door. James looked terrible. His usually immaculate appearance had slipped, shirt wrinkled, hair uncombed, dark circles under his eyes. For a moment, vindictive satisfaction flickered through me. Good. Let him suffer too. Sarah, he said, his voice rough. I know I should have called first. Yes, you should have. I didn't invite him in. He shifted uncomfortably. I heard from Robert that you're asking for the house. Robert, his lawyer. A golf buddy from his firm. I'd attended their children's birthday parties. I'm not just asking, I replied. I'm getting it. Something flashed in his eyes. Anger, maybe, or surprise at my newfound assertiveness. I'd never been the confrontational one in our relationship. Can we at least discuss this reasonably? Without lawyers? Like you reasonably discussed your affair with me before jumping into bed with Claire? He flinched as if I'd slapped him. I deserve that. You deserve a lot more than that. I leaned against the doorframe, suddenly exhausted. What do you want, James? Really? He paused, seeming genuinely at a loss. I want things to stop falling apart. I almost laughed. You should have thought of that 6 months ago. The wind picked up, rustling the new leaves on our maple tree. I'd planted it the year after we moved in, a sapling barely taller than me. Now it towered over the yard, roots deep in soil that might no longer be ours, be mine, depending on how the next few weeks unfolded. I'm keeping the house, I said with quiet finality. You can have the cabin at the lake, and the car. But this, I gestured to the home behind me. This stays with me. He looked past me into the foyer, eyes lingering on the photograph still hanging on the wall. Us, happy once. Before he spoke again, I knew I'd won this battle. Okay, he said softly. Okay, Sarah. The paint color was called Coastal Breeze, a soft, misty blue that had nothing to do with James. That was the point. For 10 years, our bedroom had been the same neutral beige he'd preferred, practical and inoffensive. Now drop cloth covered the floor, furniture had been pushed to the center, and I stood barefoot in old denim overalls, roller in hand, transforming the walls one stroke at a time. I think you missed a spot, Kate said, lounging on my relocated bed with a glass of lemonade. She'd driven up for the weekend, ostensibly to help with my home renovation projects, but so far her assistance had been mainly moral support and commentary. You could help, I suggested, stretching to reach a high corner. And deprive you of this therapeutic experience? I wouldn't dare. She grinned, then set down her glass with a dramatic sigh. Fine. Give me the edging brush. We worked in companionable silence, the radio playing softly in the background. It was June now, nearly 2 months since the day of the photos, as I'd come to think of it. The divorce proceedings crawled along, but the house was officially mine. James had conceded surprisingly easily after our doorstep confrontation. Do you talk to him at all? Kate asked, carefully painting along the ceiling line. Only through lawyers, mostly. I dipped my roller in the paint tray. He texts sometimes. I usually don't answer. What does he say? I shrugged. The usual. He's sorry. He misses me. He made a mistake. And you don't believe him? The question hung in the blue-scented air between us. Did I? Part of me wanted to. The part that remembered 15 years of shared history, of inside jokes and comfortable silences. But belief without trust was meaningless, and trust, once shattered, couldn't be glued back together without showing the cracks. I believe he's sorry he got caught, I said finally. I believe he misses the comfort of our routine. But I don't believe he regrets the choices he made, only the consequences. Kate nodded, understanding. She'd always seen through people more clearly than I had. Later, after the first coat had dried and Kate had left for a grocery run, I found myself in James's old closet, empty now except for a few forgotten items. A Northwestern sweatshirt, a pair of running shoes with worn soles, a shoebox of mementos I hadn't had the heart to look through yet. I pulled the box down, settling cross-legged on the closet floor. Inside were ticket stubs from concerts we'd attended, a pressed flower from our honeymoon, photographs from the early days. At the bottom, a small velvet pouch contained the first gift I'd ever given him, a silver tie clip with his initials. He'd worn it to every important meeting, called it his lucky charm. These fragments of a shared past stirred something in me, but not the aching grief I'd expected. Instead, I felt a gentle melancholy, like looking at childhood photographs of yourself with friends you'd long lost touch with, familiar, but distant. I returned everything to the box except the sweatshirt. That, I pulled over my head, breathing in the faint remnant of his cologne, not out of longing, but as a form of reclamation. This comfortable, worn garment wasn't just his anymore. It was mine now, repurposed like the bedroom walls. When Kate returned, she found me in the kitchen, making pasta sauce from scratch, another small rebellion. James had always preferred takeout to my cooking. Nice sweatshirt, she commented, setting down grocery bags. I'm thinking of cutting it into a crop top, I replied, only half joking. She laughed, then studied my face more seriously. You seem different today. Different how? I don't know. More present. She reached for a cherry tomato from the cutting board, popping it into her mouth. Less like you're sleepwalking. I considered this as I stirred the simmering sauce. She wasn't wrong. In the weeks immediately following the separation, I'd moved through days in a fog, going through motions without fully inhabiting them. Teaching my students, answering emails, even conversations. Everything had felt slightly removed, as if I were watching myself perform these actions from a distance. But something had shifted. Maybe it was painting the bedroom. Maybe it was the finality of the house being legally mine. Or maybe it was simply time doing what everyone promised it would, not healing exactly, but creating space for something new to grow in the cracks. I enrolled in a summer photography workshop, I said, surprising myself with the admission. Photography had been a passion in college, abandoned somewhere along the way. It starts next week at the community center. Kate's face lit up. Sarah, that's fantastic. I still have that portrait series you did of me junior year. God, those were terrible. I laughed, remembering the pretentious black and white close-ups. They were not. They were artistic. She emphasized the word with exaggerated sophistication. We laughed together, and the sound filled the kitchen, my kitchen, with something that felt remarkably like joy. Not the complete, uncomplicated happiness of before, but something hard-won and genuine. That night, after Kate had gone to bed in the guest room, I sat on my newly positioned bed in the half-painted bedroom. My phone screen showed 3 missed calls from James and a text. I found some of your books at the office. Should I drop them off? I typed a response, deleted it, then typed again. Leave them with Vanessa's office. Thanks. Simple, direct. No openings for further conversation. Before turning off the light, I looked around at the transformed space. The blue walls still needing a second coat, the rearranged furniture, the absence of his reading lamp on what used to be his side of the bed. The room felt smaller without his presence, but somehow more mine than it had ever been ours. I slept deeply that night, dreamless and still, wrapped in a northwestern sweatshirt that no longer belonged to anyone but me. July arrived with a heat wave that seemed determined to test the limits of my ancient air conditioning system. The photography workshop had become my Wednesday night refuge. 3 hours in a climate-controlled community center, learning about aperture settings and composition techniques from Elena, a retired photojournalist with silver hair and stories from every continent. You have a good eye for detail, she told me after examining my homework assignment, a series of close-ups capturing textures around my neighborhood. But you're playing it safe. Don't be afraid to get uncomfortable. I wasn't sure if she was talking about photography or life in general, but the advice resonated either way. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday, delivered by courier to my classroom after the students had left. A thick envelope containing the dissolution of 15 years, requiring only my signature to make it official. I placed it in my bag, between student papers needing grading and my camera, and tried not to think about it during the faculty meeting that followed. Drinks at O'Malley's? Suggested Diane, the 5th grade teacher who had become something of a friend in recent months. She knew about the separation. Everyone did in our small school, but never treated me with the cautious sympathy that had become so tiresome. Can't tonight? I replied. Rain check? You always say that. She gave me a knowing look. One of these days I'll get you out of that house. The truth was, I'd grown comfortable in my solitude. The house had become a sanctuary of sorts, repainted, rearranged, slowly transforming into a space that reflected only my tastes and needs. Evenings alone with a book or my photography assignments had become precious rather than lonely. At home, I set the divorce papers on the kitchen table and opened a bottle of wine. This should be a momentous occasion, I thought. The official end of my marriage? Shouldn't I feel something more profound than mild administrative annoyance at having one more task to complete? I was halfway through the document, initialing pages where indicated, when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw my neighbor Michael shifting awkwardly on my porch, holding what appeared to be a foil-covered dish. Michael and his daughter Lily had moved in next door about a year ago. He was a quiet man, recently widowed according to neighborhood gossip, raising a 7-year-old alone. We'd exchanged pleasantries over property lines, but never much more. Sorry to bother you, he said when I opened the door, but Lily insisted we bring this over. He held out the dish. She made too many brownies for her school bake sale tomorrow and thought you might want some. As if summoned, a small face peered around his legs, solemn eyes assessing me. "They have chocolate chips and marshmallows," Lily informed me seriously. "They're the best kind." "Well, that does sound like the best kind," I agreed, matching her solemnity. "Would you like to come in? I could make some hot chocolate to go with them." The invitation surprised me as much as them. I hadn't entertained anyone besides Kate since the separation. Michael hesitated. "We don't want to intrude." "You're not," I assured him, surprised to find I meant it. "I was just signing some papers." I gestured vaguely toward the kitchen. I could use the distraction. 10 minutes later, Lily was at my kitchen table, carefully arranging brownies on a plate while I heated milk for hot chocolate. Michael leaned against the counter, apologizing again for the interruption. "Really, it's fine," I said, stirring cocoa into the warming milk. "I've been meaning to be more neighborly anyway." "Divorce papers?" he asked quietly, nodding toward the stack of documents I'd pushed aside. I stiffened slightly, then nodded. No point denying what was obvious. "Been there," he said simply. "Not fun." Something about his matter-of-fact acknowledgement, free from pity or judgment, loosened the knot that had formed in my chest at the mention of divorce. "No," I agreed. "Not fun at all. Daddy was sad for a long time after Mommy died," Lily announced, apparently following our conversation while meticulously arranging marshmallows atop her creation. "But he's better now. Mostly." Michael flushed. "Lily, remember our conversation about private family matters?" "It's okay," I said, unexpectedly touched by the child's candor. "Kids see everything, don't they?" "Everything," he confirmed with rueful affection, and then announce it at the worst possible moments. We shared a smile, and something warm that had nothing to do with hot chocolate spread through my chest. After they left, Lily extracting a promise that I would attend her upcoming dance recital, I returned to the divorce papers with a lighter heart. The signature still represented an ending, but somehow the sting had lessened. My phone buzzed as I signed the final page. "James, did you get the papers?" I considered ignoring it, then typed, "Just sign them." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Feels strange, doesn't it?" For once, I answered honestly, "Yes and no," more like confirming what we already knew. "I never wanted this," he replied immediately. I stared at those 4 words, remembering the photos on my phone, the restaurant, his hand on Claire's, the careful deception maintained for months. "We don't always get what we want," I wrote back. "Sometimes we get what we choose." I sealed the signed papers in the return envelope without waiting for his response. Tomorrow I would mail them, and another chapter would officially close. But tonight, with the taste of chocolate and unexpected connection still lingering, I felt a curious lightness. My phone buzzed again, but it wasn't James. It was Diane. O'Malley's tomorrow. No excuses. We're celebrating the end of term. I hesitated, then replied, "I'll be there. First round's on me." Elena's words echoed in my mind. Don't be afraid to get uncomfortable. Maybe it was time to step outside the sanctuary I'd created, to test the waters of this new life I was building photograph by photograph, choice by choice. I picked up my camera and turned it on myself, something I'd never done before. The resulting self-portrait wasn't flattering in the conventional sense. My hair needed cutting, and the kitchen lighting cast shadows under my eyes. But there was something in my expression, a quiet determination perhaps, or the beginnings of peace, that made me save the image rather than delete it. Evidence of a woman in transition, not broken, just changing shape.